the reason why ETH Bitcoin is already doing so well is because, well, Ethereum went home, right? Whereas alts never went to the range lows. So again, that's how I think this is ultimately going to play out. So watch out for that. Again, it's that September pullback that will likely start the process of alts bleeding back to Bitcoin. But it would likely be a potential rally after that September pullback that would then be responsible for the altcoins going lower on their Bitcoin pairs. Again, people always want to know, do alts go down against Bitcoin because Bitcoin's going up or because Bitcoin's going down? And the answer is yes, right? They go down against Bitcoin no matter the direction of Bitcoin USD. You're probably tired of hearing me say it. That's the way the cycle works. And especially that's the way the cycle works when you're at higher interest rates like we are this cycle.
Bitcoin is hovering around $117,000 in August 2025, maintaining a steady position despite market fluctuations. Ethereum continues to perform strongly relative to Bitcoin, showing resilience in price and holding up well in the current cycle. In contrast, many altcoins have yet to decline to their typical range lows compared to Bitcoin. This has created a situation where we could expect altcoins to soon experience a sharper correction against Bitcoin's value. Historically, September often brings a pullback in Bitcoin's price, which usually triggers a broader market adjustment where altcoins lose value versus Bitcoin, whether Bitcoin's price in USD is stable or rising. This behavior is amplified in rising interest rate environments, like now, and points out the cyclical nature of crypto markets. Altcoins tend to bleed back to Bitcoin during these phases, while Ethereum often recovers earlier, having already reached price lows against Bitcoin. Ben Cowen recently detailed this pattern on his YouTube channel, explaining how these seasonal trends and macro conditions impact the dynamic between Bitcoin, Ethereum, and altcoins. The expected September dip could initiate a final rally for Bitcoin while pressuring altcoins, especially those still above their historical lows. Understanding these behaviors helps clarify why Ethereum outperforms many altcoins now and why the altcoin market might face challenges in the coming months. Stay tuned as we bring you more clips from Benjamin Cowen Bitcoin Analysis. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications for additional in-depth content. Thanks for joining us again. Enjoy the video.
One of the things you may notice is that Bitcoin, historically, and again, as always, historical patterns, historical moves, right? The past cannot necessarily predict the future. We must recognize that. So at the end of the day, there's a reality of no one really knows what's going to happen. But there's also a reality where Bitcoin tops near the end of post-halving years. So you will see Q4 of 2013, Q4 of 2017, and Q4 of 2021. Now, the path that took Bitcoin to each of those market cycle tops was remarkably the same. If you look closely, one of the things you'll notice with Bitcoin monthly returns is that in every post-halving year, in July and August, Bitcoin is green. You'll see in 2013, July and August were green. And in 2017, July and August were green. And in 2021, July and August were green. And so far in 2025, July and August are green. You'll also notice that in 2013, 2017, and 2021, September was red. And then in every one of those post-election years, post-halving years, October was green after the pullback in September. So the way this historically works, and we'll go through it cycle by cycle, is Bitcoin goes up in July and August, gets a pullback, generally speaking, to the bull market support band in September, and then goes into the market cycle top in Q4 of the post-halving year, which sets up the midterm year bear market. Okay? So what you have here is up in July through August, right? You can see that pretty clearly right here, up in July and August. And then a pullback in September. You can see that right there. And that pullback bottoms around the bull market support band. And then, after you get that September pullback, what has historically happened? You then get the final rally into the market cycle top. Okay? And what you'll notice is that this pattern actually repeats itself, right? So again, you have up in July and August, the pullback in September to the bull market support band, the final rally into the market cycle top, and then you put in your final market cycle top in Q4 of the post-halving year, which then sets up the midterm year bear market. All right? I don't know exactly where that top is going to be. But I will say there has been a pattern of diminishing returns, unfortunately. And if you take a price range from every September pullback, you'll notice that after the let me go to the first cycle first, right? After the first cycle from the 20-week SMA in September, Bitcoin then rallied about 1,000% to then put in the market cycle top. In the cycle after that, it rallied about 500% after the September pullback. In the cycle after that, from the September pullback, it rallied about 70%. Okay? So the bull market support band in September will likely be higher than it is now. Currently, the bull market support band for Bitcoin ranges from around 105 to 107K. So maybe in September, that 20-week SMA could correspond to around 110K, plus or minus a few $1,000s, right? Plus or minus a few K. $110,000 plus or minus a few thousand. What's a few $1,000s, my friends, right? So then it would set up a potential final rally into the market cycle top. Now, let's suppose that the 20-week SMA hits around 110K here in a few weeks. And then let's suppose Bitcoin gets a pullback to that level after hopefully first rallying up higher. Where would that put Bitcoin? Well, a 20% rally from 110K puts it at 131. And there's a chance that it goes to 130 before you get a pullback to the 20-week SMA, right? Let's just go through it, right? 20% from there would be 131. 30% from there would be 143. 40% from there would be 154. Okay? Now, last cycle, it was 70% up, and that would put Bitcoin all the way up at 186. Now, if you subscribe to the diminishing returns view, then what that would suggest is that it might be hard for Bitcoin to get up to that level if the diminishing returns idea as measured from September plays out. It could theoretically go higher than that, and the overall market cycle ROI still exhibit diminishing returns. I'm just thinking, hey, if we're sitting here and it's the end of August and Bitcoin is doing pretty good and it just feels like there's no stopping it, I'm going to be thinking, look, guys, every single September we get that pullback to the 20-week SMA. And then if that happens, it would likely be scary, not really for Bitcoin, but you know what would be scary for? It'd be scary for the altcoin market. Because I think, notice how Bitcoin keeps moving and altcoins can't seem to do anything. Why is that? Why is it that Ethereum keeps doing well, but altcoins are not? Well, I'm glad you asked. Again, it's because altcoins never went to their range lows, whereas ETH already went home. So arguably the reason you're seeing that altcoin weakness, people keep saying it's manipulation this, manipulation that. That's just a narrative because they got caught on the wrong side of the market, right? They probably would prefer had they stuck with Bitcoin and Ethereum at this point. Instead, they're watching their altcoins just bleed both Bitcoin and Ethereum over the long haul, so they scream out manipulation. But I'm telling you, the main reason is not due to that. It's just due to the fact that alts never went down to the lows on their Bitcoin pairs, which I think is going to happen probably, within the next couple of months. You can see in 2017, it actually happened in late October, early November. So I'm still expecting that ultimately to play out. And of course, the reason why Ethereum already has gone through that, the reason why ETH Bitcoin is already doing so well is because, well, Ethereum went home, right? Whereas alts never went to the range lows. So again, that's how I think this is ultimately going to play out. So watch out for that. Again, it's that September pullback that will likely start the process of alts bleeding back to Bitcoin. But it would likely be a potential rally after that September pullback that would then be responsible for the altcoins going lower on their Bitcoin pairs. Again, people always want to know, do alts go down against Bitcoin because Bitcoin's going up or because Bitcoin's going down? And the answer is yes, right? They go down against Bitcoin no matter the direction of Bitcoin USD. You're probably tired of hearing me say it. That's the way the cycle works. And especially that's the way the cycle works when you're at higher interest rates like we are this cycle.
Bitcoin's past market cycles show a pattern around post-halving years, especially in Q4 when it tends to peak. Historically, Bitcoin rises in July and August, then pulls back in September toward the bull market support band, often near the 20-week moving average, before rallying again to a peak in Q4. This happened in 2013, 2017, and 2021, with July and August showing gains, September a dip, and an October rebound. The strength of rallies after the September pullback has diminished over cycles. For 2025, the bull market support band is estimated around $110,000, and a final rally could push prices higher, though returns might be lower than before. The altcoin market tends to lag because many haven't yet hit their lows relative to Bitcoin, unlike Ethereum, which already has. Let's watch more clips from Benjamin Cowen.
As it relates to the bull market support band, we can go back and look to kind of see what happened in the prior post-halving years in August. You can see in 2021, Bitcoin moved up in August, and then it kind of found a local top by the end of August, checked in with the bull market support band, and then it went into the market cycle peak. Okay. If you go look at the cycle before that, you'll see that Bitcoin put in a local top at the end of August, and then it went into the bull market support band in September before going into its market cycle top. If you go back the cycle before that, you'll notice that Bitcoin went up into late August and then hit the bull market support band in September before going into its market cycle peak. So if this pattern were to continue, it would suggest that Bitcoin can continue to do well for most of the rest of the month, get a pullback in September to the bull market support band, and then go into whatever the market cycle peak is going to be, potentially in the fourth quarter of the year. Do note that that would actually align pretty well with the ROI from the bottom for Bitcoin in terms of time. If you look at the last two cycles and then compare it to this cycle, you can see we're currently on day 1006. Last cycle ended on day 1059. The cycle before that ended on day 1067, which would suggest, potentially still a couple of months. Just keep this in mind as we continue to watch this play out, because so far it's playing out basically like every prior post-halving year. July and August are green. We'll see if August still is green at the end of the month. If it is, I would be mentally prepared for a slight pullback in September before potentially going into the market cycle top. And where that pullback will likely be, if I had to guess, would be the trusty bull market support band, which again, the values of it right now are not as important if it does in fact take until September to reach it. But right now it ranges from around 105 to 107K. Do note it is moving up. I think we have an indicator over here that actually projects it out as well. We can look at the forecast of that 20-week SMA based on just if the price were to stay constant, which it won't. But if it did, that would put the 20-week SMA, at around 110K, 115K by about mid-September or so. So it could play out something like that, right? Where it goes up, down into September, and then up into whatever the market cycle top is going to be. Do note that if you do get that pullback by Bitcoin, let's say it rallies for another week or two, a couple more weeks, if you do get a pullback in September, it might actually correspond to that final drop by alt Bitcoin pairs, potentially to the range lows. And then that story would finally be complete. Remember that alt Bitcoin pairs got a drop to the range lows in October of 2017. And again, this drop that all Bitcoin pairs got back in 2017, it started on a Bitcoin drop and then it continued on a Bitcoin rally, right? So a lot of times, again, people say, well, would altcoins bleed on a Bitcoin drop or Bitcoin rally? And the answer is yes, right? They'll likely drop against Bitcoin when Bitcoin gets a pullback, and they'll likely drop against Bitcoin when Bitcoin goes into potentially the final rally of the cycle. So we'll see if this plays out. My guess, again, and we've talked about this for a while, my guess is that alt Bitcoin pairs will really start to roll over about late August. I'm thinking maybe around August 23rd, 22nd, 24th. I would say around late August, plus or minus a few days, is where I think you'll find alt Bitcoin pairs find a local top. They could still rally from here before that happens, right? They certainly could still rally from here before that happens. But I do expect them to roll over and that liquidity to flow back into Bitcoin. And the way it should play out, right, is that Bitcoin goes up in August, Ethereum goes too. Ethereum is leading, right? ETH Bitcoin's going up. Slight pullback in September that spooks the altcoin market. Liquidity people rush back to the relative safety of Bitcoin during that time. And then when that happens, Bitcoin then starts to move up before the alts because people want the assurance that Bitcoin's bull market is not over. And then once it breaks into new highs, then the altcoin market moves. So I think that you can kind of see how this might all play out. It's just a matter of waiting and seeing this whole thing kind of finalize and remembering that even with altcoins, we saw a low in June of 2023, we saw a low in June of 2022, June of 2023, another low in June of 2024, and then another low in June of 2025. But notice how a lot of the larger alt Bitcoin rallies that we've gotten didn't actually start until November. So again, it's hard to know if it's going to play out like it always does, but I would say why fade what's always happened at this point when it just keeps, the cycle has been nothing more than, hey guys, people keep saying it's going to be different, and instead Bitcoin leads the bull market, altcoins lag, people wonder why altcoins are lagging, and they just keep on lagging. Same thing with Ethereum, right? If people thought Ethereum was going to lead, it didn't until it went home. So I think you're likely going to see the valuation of ETH continue to go up against Bitcoin for the next couple of weeks. I think you'll see liquidity flow back into Bitcoin September, October. And that is my guess as to how this is going to play out. That's my guess. We'll see if that's how it does. But as it relates to the bull market support band, remember, wherever this ends up being in September is probably where the next pullback will be. So you could, for instance, you could see Bitcoin rally up several thousand more dollars in August, and then get that pullback in September, and then go into the rally potentially to whatever the market cycle top is.
Looking back at previous post-halving years, Bitcoin has followed a strong pattern around August and September. In 2021, Bitcoin climbed through August, reaching a local high near the end of the month before touching the bull market support band and moving into its market cycle peak. The cycle before that showed a similar trend, with Bitcoin peaking in late August, pulling back to the support band in September, and then rallying to a market cycle top. This repeated again in the cycle before that. Based on this, Bitcoin may continue rising through August, face a pullback in September near the bull market support band, currently around $105,000 to $107,000, and is expected to rise to about $110,000 to $115,000 by mid-September, and then push toward the market cycle peak, possibly in the fourth quarter. Ben Cowen noted that if this pullback occurs, it could mark the final drop for many Bitcoin pairs to their range lows, similar to what happened in October 2017. He explained that altcoins tend to lose value against Bitcoin both during Bitcoin pullbacks and the final rally phases, as liquidity flows back into Bitcoin. He also suggested that many Bitcoin pairs might reach a local top between August 22nd and 24th before starting to roll over, which could push money back to Bitcoin's relative safety. Ethereum, having already reached its lows against Bitcoin earlier, might lead this movement, while altcoins lag behind. Ben Cowen emphasized that Bitcoin and Ethereum are likely to strengthen through August, followed by a September pullback and then a rally toward the market cycle peak. The bull market support band will probably be the key level for any pullback, setting the stage for what comes next in this cycle. As we wrap up, with Bitcoin likely finding support around the bull market band in September, how do you think altcoins will react? Will they drop sharply against Bitcoin or hold their ground this time? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Share this video and hit the like button. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.